When it comes to Final Destination Bloodlines, it feels less like a grand return for the Final Destination franchise and more like an acceptable new entry like it never left. So to summarize the film, Stephanie for 2 months now has been having these horrible nightmares about her grandmother Iris dying in a very graphic and horrific way. And unfortunately for her, since she started going to college, she has kind of distanced herself from her family. So when it comes to her reintegrating in order to get answers about her grandmother, she gets a little bit of the cold shoulder. And because the grandma named Iris is a bit of a touchy subject, no one really wants to initially help all that much. Thankfully, though, begrudgingly, her aunt does give her some information, and so begins the descent into Stephanie learning about the premonitions and what they mean, her learning about seeing all the signs that death is coming after them, and her learning about the curse their family is under because Iris saved hundreds of people and death wants to get its body count back. So, get into the review section. A highlight for us is definitely going to be the dark humor, and granted, some of it is going to be dependent on how twisted you are. Like, for example, if you've seen the Final Destination movies previously, you would know Tony Todd, who plays William John Bloodworth or JB. He tells the kids how to survive, and one of the scenes is watching Eric and his brother walk past a nursery where there's a bunch of babies, and with the thing being said that you can take someone's life and collect the rest of their time, there are looks and jokes about them possibly taking out babies in order to live. And it's a dark joke, but it gives you a sense of what kind of humor, especially from Eric, that this movie's going to offer you. But another highlight plus is that it doesn't necessarily set up a sequel. Pretty much, Final Destination Bloodlines is a one and done. It doesn't seek to extend things. For after all, JB, Tony Todd, rest the dead, is passed away. With the way this film handles everybody in this film, the potential for a sequel is not that high. And while, of course, death is eternal and could come up in different situations, and they go through Iris's clippings, and this film could easily do a prequel where it focuses on the various families that Iris saved, there's no explicit this is what's going to happen next or a tease of we're going to focus on these people next. It's when it comes to Final Destination Bloodlines, it's anywhere between we're testing to see do people still like what this franchise is about, or just giving a gift to longtime fans. Maybe people are new and saying this is what we used to do back in the day. With all that said, the deaths are still very much gruesome when it comes to this movie and doesn't necessarily compete with graphic films like The Ugly Stepsister or even Saw back in its heyday in terms of being really like nasty to the point where you can't eat while you watch this. Absolutely not. There's still a tinge of comedy here that makes it so, as violent as things may be, as much as you may get a jump scare, it's never something so bad where it's just disgusting to watch. However, this is still Final Destination, and the main thing Final Destination always had over its peers is that the anxiety, the paranoia can give you can outlast the movie. Like, many people who are millennials like me have seen Final Destination 2, and because of that scene, which you've probably seen with the advertisement for this movie about the logs which killed people in that pileup on the highway, I still do not drive behind any type of construction vehicle that has logs, that has those PVC pipes or whatever they're called. It's just not going to happen. And unfortunately, I wouldn't say when it comes to Final Destination Bloodlines, it kind of brings that out of you and kind of brings that fear that maybe you may end up in some tall tower that's going to break apart or anything like that. But if you see this in Dolby, if you see this in IMAX, you feel the sound of the whole theater shaking and all that. An anxious or paranoid part of you may think to yourself, how possible is it that this whole theater can collapse on all of us? And even as you get out of the theater, you may think about all the cracks in the theater, the weird sounds with your car. It can make you kind of realize how much death could be watching you carefully, and you may have just gotten lucky a lot of your life, but now your luck may potentially run out. Keeping on with the highlights, and just to be clear, there's no low points on the fence for this. The next highlight is that you'll actually care who lives or dies, which is for me a big thing with horror movies because if you're just fodder for the villain, or in this case the entity, then what is there to care about besides how you die? And as we mentioned, not necessarily the biggest thing for this film. It's decent enough, but not like the biggest thing. But I will say when it comes to Stephanie, when it comes to her family members, even though you may not learn much about her family members besides what's their name and who they are in terms of you being able to identify them, it's still enough because you see with Stephanie going from this academic genius in her family, straight A's, valedictorian high school, to now kind of struggling, there is this almost need for her to kind of reset, to kind of rejoin the group, to reintegrate with her family, and you want to see that happen. And I would even extend that to the relationship she has with her mom, which, with the last highlight, admittedly is not the most emotional. It's not going to make you feel like this is some type of horror drama type thing. But I will admit, compared to Clown in the Cornfield and other horror movies that tried to have some type of emotional element, Stephanie and Darlene's relationship, especially since Darlene abandoned Stephanie when she was 10, you can kind of get into it. It's, again, not going to be something that's going to pull at your heartstrings, make you cry or anything like that. But at the very least, it's a good effort for a horror movie, and it doesn't make you want to roll your eyes and wish they downplayed it. That's why overall, while I wouldn't say that Final Destination Bloodline makes you crave more of this and then have it become a yearly or maybe a semi-annual series like it was in the past, it does make you appreciate what this film franchise did. It makes you willing to maybe in 3 to 5 years see another movie. And honestly, as much as this feels more like another entry in the franchise and like a grand return, it still was good enough to go see in the theaters. It would also be good enough to just wait till it's on HBO Max or wherever it may come out on streaming. But no matter what, if you are someone who is a fan of Final Destination, if you're someone who has ever been interested in the franchise, this is a decent entry point, and it may not be the best film in it whatsoever, but it definitely fits good in the middle enough to be one of your potential firsts.